Oasis were a hugely successful British rock band between 1991 and 2009, and have been generally labelled as Britpop and part of the Britpop movement. They're from Manchester, and famously the band centred around the brothers Liam and Noel Gallagher. Liam sang, Noel wrote the songs and played guitar. And there were some other people in the band who were less famous than the Gallagher brothers. They sold loads and loads of records. They did some really huge gigs, and they argued a lot, especially with each other, including Liam suing or threatening to sue Noel when Noel had said publicly that Liam had cancelled a concert because he was hungover. It sounds like their existence in the band was fairly obviously they made lots of money and did lots of stuff, but there was a kind of toxic atmosphere generally around the whole band, it would seem. Occasionally one of them would decide to leave partway through a tour, but they always seemed to get back together again afterwards. And they produced 7 albums. Hi, my name is Dan. So this was the third studio album by Oasis, and it came after their 2 absolutely mega successful albums, Definitely Maybe and What's the Story, Morning Glory. I didn't know this album before I heard it, but if you had blindfolded me and put this on in a room, I would have pretty quickly told you that I was sure it was Oasis, because it sounds like Oasis, and Oasis have a very distinctive sound. Yeah. Okay, so I've never understood the fuss that was behind Oasis. I had friends at the time when this was kind of a current thing who were absolutely besotted, effectively, with Oasis. Maybe some of the attraction was that they weren't as obviously manufactured and produced as some of the very slick pop that was coming out at the end of the 80s and early 90s. But they were still producing songs that were pretty memorable. They were definitely rough around the edges, not just in the production, but in the personalities. Having said that, I found that there were no songs on this album that I immediately went, oh yes, this song, and that I knew, despite the fact that this album was a huge seller. It was, at the time, it was the fastest selling album in British history when it first came out. So let's try to do some description. If you don't know what Oasis sound like, then I've got my work cut out for me, but let's have a go at this. So it's kind of mid-paced, generally rock. There's a typical bass to it. That a lot of their songs seem to have a very similar kind of speed. It's all based around chord structures, and there's, I would say, the chord sequences are what I would think of as typical Oasis chord sequences. Again, doesn't necessarily mean anything to you, but there are particular choices of chords that they have that can be quite distinctive for them. Actually, it's very like some of the Beatles' choice of chords, and I think that influence is very much acknowledged, that Oasis, although they didn't sound exactly like the Beatles, musically they were quite similar in some ways. The dominant sound here is guitar, and it's huge. So I sometimes talk about, particularly about indie rock and some areas of alt rock, and saying that they have this kind of curtain of guitars at the background, where somebody's playing an electric guitar, they're playing chords, they're not stopping it with their hand at all. It's just a constant wash of guitar sound. Well, this album has taken that idea to extremes, and apparently at points there's the overdubbing of the guitars got up to 50 guitars at some points, which is just enormous, and it sounds big. It has this really big kind of background sound to it, but the consequence of that is that it's big and it's kind of all-encompassing, but it's also quite mushy. as a result, because there's so much going on. There are other changes in textures at various points. There's occasional bit of acoustic guitar. The third song on the album has got some different tones in it. There's different bits here and there, and there's especially kind of the ends and the starts of the tracks, as is often the case. There's kind of something a bit more interesting going on sometimes. The songs here are long, not by prog rock standards, but certainly by pop rock standards. We're kind of, coming in at tracks at 7 minutes, 9 minutes even. So he's taking its time, which, generally I'm in favour of. Mostly, I would say, they're not the songs themselves. The songwriting, I don't think, is hugely inspired. There was nothing that particularly resonated with me in the words. That some fairly recognisable ideas in there. Not all of them. Some of it's cryptic, as is normal. The two kind of standout tracks for me was Fade In Out, which has got some slide guitar in it, and it's got some nice textures and some nice sounds and riffs to it. I quite enjoyed that. And the one that I think I would particularly say I enjoyed even more was All Around the World. And so All Around the World is a long track, and it spends a lot of the track based around a very simple chord sequence, but it's a chord sequence that I like. It's particularly exciting. It goes, just to be slightly technical, chord 1, chord 2, then chord 4. And it's kind of an inverted version of Hey Jude by the Beatles, and is very similar in feel to that long tail out from Hey Jude. Although in this case, with Oasis, they've got 4 key changes in there, I think I counted, and various other things going on. What else should I mention? Oh, yes, is big sound. I haven't mentioned the orchestra, so there are occasional orchestra tones in there as well. The guitars are so big that they're almost drowning out the orchestra at times, which is it's obviously this kind of huge thing. So I would say generally most of it, meh. A couple of tracks, all right. It's just about enough to push it into a 7 for me. What do you think? You might be a rabid Oasis fan, and so you might be able to tell me all the things that Oasis fans love about this album, or maybe even hate about this album. I don't know. So do let me know what you think in the comments below. That's it from me for now.